Hey, good afternoon. I'm going to give you an overview of the Flex on Rails course. I'm shooting the thing outside. I'm in the middle of a huge park in East Bay, and all I have is a Starlink internet connection and a solar panel. That's not what I want to talk about, though. Obviously, I want to run you through what you can expect to learn from this course. And another thing that I'm doing differently, aside from shooting this whole thing outside, is I'm going to use a real production Rails application. I'm not a huge fan of courses that teach using these kind of toy applications, so I'm going to get into that and show you the application that we're going to be working with. All right, let's kick it off though first by just kind of looking at the outline and what it is that you can expect to learn. I always like using the word ambitious. I'm assuming that you're building a Rails application, you want it to be really high quality, you want the UI to be consistent, you want it to be clean, you want it to be easy to work with. That's kind of the promise of Flex and Flex components. Now, I think a lot of you are coming in working with existing Rails applications. So you're probably working with partials and views and all those things. And this is going to kind of give you a way to get control of those things using Flex components. And I'll go over some of the other alternatives. And of course, whenever you put this all together, it's going to level up your architecture. So you'll not only have a nice backend with Rails models and controllers, but you'll also have a nice modular front end using Flex components, and you can snap those pieces together. Uh, a bit about myself. I was CTO of a Rails application for about 15 years. I lived through all the pain of trying to manage the front end in Rails with partials and templates. Even went as far as building a JavaScript single page application on the front end. So my scar tissue hopefully is going to be your gain, and I'm hoping you get a lot out of this so you don't make the same mistakes that I made. Now, of course, we're going to kick this thing off with the introduction, which this is the video that we're talking about now, and then I'm going to run you through some of the why. So that'll start with giving you an overview, why Rails, why Flex, why not View component, and why should you even bother with components. So once we kind of get into the why and you have the broader context of why components are useful, we'll jump into the fundamentals. And for there, we're going to cover kind of the basics just to lay a solid foundation for what is Flex, how exactly does it work, what does it mean if HTML is Ruby, and how can you use Ruby inheritance and modules and mix-ins to just make a very powerful front end for your view. There's some other little things in Flex called kits, which I'll touch on that make things really nice for working with the front end. And of course, compositions and testing. You're going to want to know how to take all these components and put them together and make sure that you can test everything. Uh, Existing Rails applications. All right, so again, most of you are coming in with an existing Rails application. Maybe you started building a Rails application and just partials and templates feel a bit off, or you have a 5 or even 10-year-old Rails application and things are just getting kind of out of hand. You're noticing inconsistencies, maybe updating the front end takes longer than you would like. And we're going to jump into a lot of different topics here. And as I said earlier, we're actually going to be using a production Rails application called Thingiebase. So I'll give you a quick background on Thingiebase. This is an application that I started building over 5 years ago, just purely to solve my own problem of how do I keep things in my garage organized. These are actually hand-drawn images that I drew on an iPad, so that's kind of fun. But you can see here we have these boxes with QR codes on them. The idea is that it's a database where if you have an inventory for a home or a small business, you can enter all these items in there. So that's a very kind of standard Rails CRUD application. You put all the items in there, and then you can print these things called magic labels. So if you have like a thermal label printer, you can print these labels, you slap them on a box, and then later on you can scan the QR code with your phone and see what's inside of the thing. So that's the gist of the application. If we go inside to take a look at it, we'll click around a little bit, and you can see we have a pretty basic UI here. And here it is. This is our home inventory. We have a shelf. The shelf has food on it. There's nothing inside the food folder. There's cheese on the shelf. It's kind of what you expect, right? Rails CRUD application. And if we flip over to the source for this application, if I have this thing open, we will see that I currently have a bunch of templates. So this is not a Phlex application yet. I did start bringing Phlex over into this thing, but if we look at all the views, you can see I have tons and tons of views in this application, and I'm going to look at how do we just incrementally bring this Rails application over to Phlex, or I should say more accurately, how can you integrate Phlex components into existing Rails applications? So we'll look at the migration path of that. Everything from templates to layouts to staying organized, how it fits into helpers. We'll get into caching and of course action mailer. How can you use Phlex to render action mail components? And again, we are going to be doing that with a real living production web application and deploying it along the way. And this is live at thingybase.com. Again, this is a real production web application. There are users who are using this and they are paying for it. I just think it's better for a course to use kind of real world examples instead of just making up a toy application. And of course, once we hit on the basics of Rails integrations, we'll touch into how can you integrate Phlex and Hotwire. Hotwire is a way of doing a lot of things that you would do with a single page JavaScript application, but instead you're going to be using Phlex, and you're going to be rendering all the views on the server and pushing the HTML out over the wire. And Turbo does a lot of things to update the UI so that it has kind of the same seamless feel that you would expect from a single page JavaScript application, but without all the complexity and API boundaries. Another thing that I'm going to spend a bit more time on is how can you build forms with components. This I think is going to be a big one because for the pre-order customers I've already been in touch with, they've asked me, hey, can you go into depth on forms? I want to see some non-trivial form examples. I actually started a Twitter thread on this as well, asking people, hey, what are some of the most annoying and frustrating parts of building forms in Rails? And I got a lot of pretty good stuff in there. There's topics on fields for, just kind of dealing with more highly stateful form data. So for example, multi-step form wizards. Another thing is how can you actually implement forms using Phlex components. The Rails helpers don't actually work that well with Phlex, so I'll show you how you can use a library called Superform to just build forms completely out of components. And of course, nested forms, and there's a lot of just various issues. One kind of observation I've had from this thread is that people are doing a lot of things on the client side, and I think with Phlex and controllers and more tightly kind of coupling views with controllers, I think you could do a lot more on the server so that you have to do less on the client side. And of course, there's a ton of form stuff like that in Thingybase. So we'll be visiting a lot of forms and hitting on that section pretty hard. All right, and of course, after that, there's a question of, well, how do you style your Phlex components? There's a lot of different opinions on how to style components. Some folks tend to want to use just regular CSS. Other folks, myself included, like to use utility frameworks like Tailwind CSS. So I'll be kind of looking at how to manage style sheets with various approaches that people use. So we'll hit on that. And then finally, this is really the section I'm looking the most forward to is what would it look like if you built a Rails application just using pure Phlex? I'm talking zero ERB, no Slim, no Haml, just no templates, pure Phlex classes. I've already built a few applications like this. If I build a new Rails application, I'll take this approach. If you have an existing Rails application, you might not go this far. However, it is useful to know that this is possible. It's going to give you ideas of just different things you can do that you never thought you could whenever you're mixing views and controllers in Rails. So it'll be useful regardless of whether or not you want to go all the way. And we'll see how far I get with Thingybase. I think for Thingybase, I will probably just implement a feature using 100% Phlex. We'll see if I get as far as bringing over the entire application. All right, so again, I think if you have a Rails application, whether you're building something completely new from scratch or you have an existing Rails application and you just want a higher level of kind of fit and finish on your front end and your UI without a ton of complexity, you're going to benefit a lot from this Flex on Rails course. So hope you enjoy the course. If you have any questions or you can think of something that I could clarify during the course, please send me an email, brad@beautifulruby.com, and I'll get back to you.